It's a new year and a new chance for you to make a fresh start with your compliance. For the next 31 days on the FCPA Compliance Report, we're going to be bringing you a daily tip, strategy, or idea that you can use to improve your program. Here's your host, Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist.
This month's sponsor of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program is Affiliated Monitors. Founded in 2004, Affiliated Monitors provides professional, independent integrity monitoring and ethics and compliance assessments nationally and internationally and across almost all industries. With its knowledge of effective ethics and compliance programs and cultures, Affiliated Monitors is respected for its work as the corporate monitor on matters ranging from multinational corporations to small and mid-sized companies and even individuals. Having served in over 750 monitorships, no one has more experience as an independent monitor than the team at Affiliated Monitors. For more information on how an independent monitor can help improve your company's ethics and compliance program, visit this month's sponsor, Affiliated Monitors, at www.affiliatedmonitors.com. Today, the Board of Directors Compliance Committee. Under the U.S. Sentencing Guidelines, a Board of Directors must exercise reasonable oversight on the effectiveness of a company's compliance program. The Department of Justice Prosecution Standards pose the following questions. Do the Board of Directors exercise independent review of a company's compliance program? And are the directors provided sufficient information to enable the exercise of that independent judgment? Moreover, the FCPA guidance requires a CCO, that's Chief Compliance Officer, to have direct access to the board or an appropriate subcommittee of the board. The guidance also requires a tangible commitment from top levels of an organization, including a board of directors, that the company will create an ethical culture. At the board of directors level, a board compliance committee can devote itself exclusively to non-financial compliance, such as anti-corruption compliance as required by the FCPA. While many companies have fulfilled these obligations through an audit committee, I believe the better approach is to have a separate compliance committee. The reason is clear, that a compliance committee has become not only central to any well-run business, but it's critical to overseeing a wider variety of risks than the typical audit committee has experience with, which usually is only aimed towards financial risks. A compliance committee on the board should be the primary means by which the board of directors monitors and oversees the company's compliance program, compliance reporting, and disclosure as appropriate. It also oversee a company's relationship with its outside auditors who may be looking at a compliance program, or indeed outside counsel who may be brought in for assistance. Audit committee members need to have certain compliance literacy and compliance expertise. They should be comprised of persons with sufficient understanding of compliance to enable them to act effectively to oversee the integrity of the company's compliance reporting process and any statements that the compliance function may be required to make. They should be able to read and understand a compliance program. They should be able to read and understand the reporting that a compliance program engages in or develops. I would suggest that one member should qualify as a compliance expert that I'll talk about in a subsequent podcast. The compliance expertise requirement is generally fulfilled by a committee member with a background in compliance that permits the board to conclude in good faith that the director is capable of understanding the most complex issues around compliance that are likely to be encountered in the course of the company's business. A board compliance committee should provide regular reports to the board of directors as a whole, and the directors should satisfy themselves that the compliance committee, management, and all outside professionals are satisfied with the compliance condition of the company as they are presented. The compliance committee should get regular reports from management, the chief compliance officer, and probably even the internal auditor to provide a reasonable assurance that the internal compliance controls of the company are adequately structured to allow the company to fulfill its obligations under the FCPA for having an effective set of internal controls. In addition, the Board Compliance Committee should oversee management's design and implementation of policies and procedures to control compliance risks. Audit committees should discuss guidelines and policies to govern the process by which risk is assessed and managed at a corporation. This means that while the board as a whole has a responsibility to understand and oversee risks, it is the detailed responsibility of the compliance committee to provide information so that the board can exercise good judgment in everything it does. While there are some risks, such as compensation risks, which may be the responsibility of the full board, there are certainly some that would be appropriate for the compliance committee. While risk management is a particularly complex and indeed new area that many boards may have to consider, if the company puts this in the compliance function, I think it has a much better chance to manage it adequately. So what should the Board Compliance Committee begin its inquiry with? I would suggest the following question. How do we know it's working? In other words, is the company's compliance program living up to the hallmarks of an effective compliance program in the eyes of the government? At this point, I would lay out 4 specific areas of inquiry, and we're going to go into these in much more detail in subsequent podcasts. The Board Compliance Committee should obtain information to process on the compliance process to carry out the compliance function rather than the details of the specific compliance issues. They need to understand that there is a single individual or internal corporate discipline keeping track of the compliance function and making sure that it is properly handled. A board needs to understand, or the compliance committee needs to understand, that there is a system in place that keeps track of compliance requirements. A key area of Board Compliance Committee interest should be in around hotlines or other internal reporting mechanisms. Here, a compliance committee needs to know the details of both inbound issues and outbound responses thereto. On the inbound side, this means details about who answers the reports that come in via email or phone, how this information is triaged, and in what time frame. It also requires an understanding of whether the reporting system is truly anonymous with no use of caller ID or GPS tracking. The next series of questions deals with the responses to any information which comes to the attention of the company, such as basic inquiries about how reports are classified and routed, who gets notified for what types of calls, how the investigation process is divided among the various functions, or is it outsourced? Finally, what is the response rate and the response time for reports that come in? A Board Compliance Committee must know who is accountable and responsible for each segment of the compliance program. They should obtain assurance that the compliance function has developed a charter that makes it clear to them where the obligations fall across management so it can assess accountability. While it is true an effective Board Compliance Committee will allow management and the compliance officer to do his or her job running the business, they understand that it is their job to set long-term strategy. Strategic planning is another area that is well suited for oversight by a Board Compliance Committee. For such a committee to be both effective and informed, it must have an appreciation of where the corporate compliance function stands, not only at the present moment, but also has a strategic plan for how compliance and ethics can continue to grow. My colleague Stephen